This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. I think something that we neglect sometimes is that part of, in the actual title of what we do, pool service, we are a service industry, and sometimes it's neglected out there how we deal with customers, especially those customers that are tough. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. I think all of us have a different take on customer service, and all of us kind of get our buttons pushed by different people. Some people will upset you, other people won't upset you, and I think it's a case-by-case, person-by-person personality. Of course, there's some background that you have that maybe makes you triggered by somebody who's very critical. In a case where you have critical parents, critical customer, you'll kind of go back in time and replace their face with your parent or your mom and dad's face when the customer's telling you something. These are all issues that are underlying, and of course, you can work through those issues with a lot of effort. What I mean by this is, have you ever, I've done this myself. I have a teenager and you're yelling at them and they're doing something that upsets you, and then your phone rings and it's someone like, a customer, and you're like, "Oh, hi, Miss Smith, how you doing?" You can change gears pretty fast mentally because you have to. And that's what I mean by there are tools that you can implement. I think one thing you can implement is pausing for a second before you respond to someone who's giving you a hard time. Another thing you can do is take a step back and just leave the scene. I do this sometimes, and I've done this before, where a customer is just irritating me to the point where I'm going to say something, and I've been at fault where I've said something back and I've lost my temper in a situation before. It doesn't end pretty, and you lose that customer usually, but I've been guilty of doing that myself. In the early years of doing this, I didn't have thick enough skin if that would happen. But you develop those skills, and so I think you can develop the skill set based on your personality, how to handle things. If you have to step away again, go to your truck and just kind of punch the ceiling or whatever you do in there, you can do that as well. But there are ways to deal with difficult customers without losing the service account. And there may be times when you want to dump that account because they are being difficult in a way that's beyond professional, and you can't handle that particular customer. With that said, customer service is probably the hardest aspect of pool service. In my opinion, cleaning a pool is fairly easy. Balancing the water can be pretty easy, but dealing with a customer that's in your face or that gets you or rubs you the wrong way is the hardest aspect of this. I always remember the story. My niece worked at Kohl's for a couple of years, and she worked in the return department, and she's seen all kinds of things, and it's probably helped her develop a calmer personality working in the returns department. People come in agitated, upset, and they take it out on the person at that counter, of course. And there was one instance where they have a return policy, like no questions asked, and the mom's there with her kids, and she said, "All right, kids, take off your shoes." And these shoes are like worn, like they've been worn for months, and she slaps them on the counter and says, "I want to return these." It's like she was flabbergasted, but of course their policy is like, don't say nothing to the customer, go ahead and just do that and scan it and give them the money. But something like that, of course, is extremely irritating because they're taking advantage of the system that the store has in place. And that used to be the way with Costco for many years. I had a friend who worked in Costco, and people would bring back computers. They had like no questions asked return policies on a lot of stuff. They changed that with electronics. I think it's like 90 days now. But you could bring back anything, like 5-year-old computer, they would take it back. So there are the situations where people will take advantage of your policies. And I think that's true with pool service. They're going to take advantage of the fact that you are a nice person and you're friendly and you're professional. And some people will take advantage of that in different ways. One way, of course, is someone who is chronically late paying. This is something I think that either you pay on time or you don't. Either you get to a party early or you're always the one there that's late. And there are these people with the chronic late payments where you message them, they're always late. I've had a customer that was so late that I had to sit there with her checkbook. I'm dating myself here, but I had to sit there literally out at the poolside with the checkbook, looking at her entries in her check ledger and trying to figure out how far behind she was. I know this is like something that people don't even write checks anymore, but this was what happened. They would leave a check out for me and I would take it and cash it. And you couldn't scan it in your phone or take a picture of it like nowadays. You had to actually go in and deposit the check. And it became where you could do it at the ATM finally. That was great. You put the check in the ATM and you can deposit it. But you had to physically go in there and do that. And she was always late, and so late that I had to go through her check ledger to see what month she was at. Really irritating. Nowadays, of course, everything's electronic. You can find out who didn't pay right away, and then you message them. And if they're chronically late all the time, it's probably just their personality trait. They don't really take pool service as something that's important, or paying you as important. They have other bills or obligations. They may just forget about it. It may not even be anything personal towards your service. It's just their personality. So this can be a problem because you have to balance your books. You have to have the money coming in to balance everything every month. And if they're late, it really messes up how you're balancing hopefully you're balancing everything every month. And it really messes up your ledger. So this can be something that has to be solved. You can do a couple things with a customer that's always late. Of course, you can drop the service and let them know that I wouldn't say you're dropping the service for that reason. I would just say you're consolidating and you're going to have to shed some accounts that you can't manage anymore. And unfortunately, they're one of them. That's probably like the last resort. But they can be frustrating and difficult because no matter how many times you text them or remind them, they're always going to pay late. So you have to live with certain people that just can't pay on time. And that's just the nature of how they are. Maybe you can set the billing a little earlier so that you have more time to remind them that the payment's late. There's really hasn't been a really great solution that I can think of to solve this problem. You could do direct deposit. That's something that generally will solve the problem, but a lot of times the customer misses things in that case. So if you charge them for tablets or filter cleaning, they're going to be 2 or 3 months late with that because they never reset their direct deposit. So there are some drawbacks with that as well. There's extra charges on the bill and they miss it. So that's one type of customer that you'll run into a lot that I consider to be tough because it really affects your bottom line and it's really part of their personality in a lot of cases. The next one is someone who constantly complains about your service. Now, you may do a great job and you may not have any issues with the pool, but they're always finding something to complain about. Maybe a short message here and there about the fact that there's some debris that was left in the pool, a leaf. This has happened to me. I leave the pool immaculate and the customer texts me, it's like, hey, there's a leaf in the deep end. Well, it must have fell in or I might have missed it, who knows. But those are really irritating. I had another member of my group where the customer put like a lawn chair over the skimmer basket, and that's kind of like how they were testing if they cleaned it. And so she texted him, was like, hey, I have a lawn chair over the skimmer basket. I noticed you didn't move it. And so you probably didn't clean out the skimmer basket. And then, of course, he messaged back saying, well, yeah, I did move it. And I moved it back over it because that's where it was. And I just thought maybe that's where you wanted the chair. These little things are irritating, but you can handle it pretty well. And it's something that you're going to run into because some people can be very picky and they can just be complainers by nature. You kind of know the person. They're complaining about everything when they come out and talk to you. They complain about their electric bill. They complain about the pool being cloudy when it's not. It's one of those things where you have to deal with it. I had a customer, really nice customer, but they were really picky about this stuff. And one day they were having a pool party with their grandkids over, and they gave me like this really, I would say it was not a polite message, that there's algae on the step and I need to come over and correct it right away because they don't want their grandkids to get sick. Now, of course, algae is not going to be something that's going to make them sick. Generally, I mean, people swim in lakes and ponds and they're fine. So I went over there, and that was later at my route because I wanted to make them happy. And of course, customers are always right. Is that correct? So I went over there, and literally the algae on the step was like 1 inch, barely visible. They could have probably just run their hand over it and dusted it off. It was really irritating. And they came out and they're like, "Oh, I'm glad you showed up to treat the pool and brush the algae." And I just smiled and said, "Yeah, I took care of it, no problem." And I apologized for it, and that was it. Now, of course, I was gritting my teeth when I did that, and I was extremely irritated to go back there for that little bit of algae that was minuscule. But that's kind of what you have to deal with certain customers to keep the account, if you want that account, of course. And you can train them, of course. There's certain things you can say, like, I'll come back to do this, but there's going to be a service charge. And one thing that's really helpful, and this is something that one of the members in the group did and preached, is that he would invoice the customer for any return visit, and $85 charge if they wanted to go back for something. The first time he did this, he would zero out the invoice and say, this is a complimentary return visit, but any future calls I'll have to charge you because, I'm going over there and it's my time. And it was a pretty effective way to get the customer to stop calling him back all the time for little things. So this is something that I think is important, and it's something that is vital, that if you're going to return back to the stop, the customer has to realize there's going to be a service charge for that. Just like anything, if you hire a plumber or an electrician and they have to go back, they're going to charge you for that return visit, because it's going to be their time and their money. Same thing that you have to do. The customer that you can never get a hold of is kind of irritating. They may not intentionally be ghosting you, but they may not be responsive to you. You can leave door hangers, you can leave text messages, emails. You never get a response for the customer. I've had this happen before. A lot of times this happens with a rental property when I'm trying to contact the landlord and I'm telling him there's a problem with the pool and they're not responsive, or if they have a property management company that's even worse, they're even less responsive. So I've had situations where the motor has burned out and can get no response from anybody to fix it, to okay the repair cost, and the pool starts to turn, it sits there. I've even had one customer go a whole month before finally returning the messages about the motor not working, and his message simply was, "Yeah, go ahead and change it." I mean, it was like after a month. It was kind of, irritating, but that's an extreme case of it. But there are customers that just lack communication with you and they don't get back to you. It could be a language barrier in some cases, but it could be the fact that they just don't reply to your messages. It's kind of an irritating personality trait, but it does happen, and that customer can cause problems for your pool business for sure, because a lot of things are immediate. You need to immediately address situations, and if they don't respond, they can't be addressed, and that kind of snowballs at that point. This one here kind of goes hand in hand. It's someone who is always looking at their invoice and kind of nitpicking every detail of it, and also comparing the prices online with Amazon or another online store. They may even see something on Google and it's like, $15 for something that's $100, and it's on Temu or something, one of those weird sites where everything is cheap. And this is another thing that can be irritating, when they're always questioning the charges on their bill, always questioning the prices that you're charging them for items. And simply, there's a few ways around this, but sometimes you're going to have to give them a refund if they're really insistent, depending on what the product is. Of course, if it's like, a cleaner part, I usually just tell them, sure, you can go ahead and buy that on Amazon and I'll put it in. and I'll take the other part and I'll just keep that part myself as a spare part and learn that this customer is not going to want me to put parts on. They're going to order them themselves. And I can live with that because I'm getting the money for the monthly service. And, there's not a lot of markup in certain parts anyway. But if it's a large item like a pump or motor or filter and they want to buy one online, I highly discourage that because when you buy it at your supplier, there's a good chance that anything that goes wrong will be warrantied by the major manufacturer brand. Pentair, Hayward, Jandy, Waterway. They're going to have some kind of skin in the game because they don't want to lose their connection with the supplier. They don't want to get pool pros upset. So they'll be more easygoing when there's a problem and there's a warranty issue. When they buy something on Amazon or another site, a lot of times the manufacturers will void that warranty. Now, whether that's legal or not is another question, but they will void the warranty if it's not something that is purchased by a pool pro and professionally installed. And a lot of these things look like manufactured equipment, but they're really not. They're like a knockoff, like Extreme Pump USA or something. And I discourage customers that you get what you pay for. So if you're going to get a $600 VS pump, you're getting a $600 VS pump, and it's not going to be nearly as reliable or durable as something that you're going to pay $1,500 for. That's just a fact of products. If you buy something cheap, it's going to be cheap. It's not going to last. It's not going to have the good warranty, and you really can't warranty it. When I get something from my plumber, he'll pick something up at a supplier because it has a better warranty. If I want to get it at Home Depot, he'll put it in, but then it's the Home Depot warranty. And so it just explains to the customer that when you pick up the product, the filter, heater, pump, there is a built-in warranty from the manufacturer. Your supplier is only using OEM equipment and they're only selling that, I should say to you, and you're only installing that. So I would explain that in detail to the customer. You're basically educating them on, this sourcer of equipment is not as reliable as my wholesaler, and I want you to be aware of this. This, of course, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a ton of other tough customers out there, a ton of other tough situations, but you can deal with it. You're just going to have to realize that, the service account itself is worth a lot of money. Servicing that pool, if you keep that pool over a 2 or 3 year period, it's going to bring in a lot of income. And these are minor annoyances that, it could just be the customer's personality. And looking at it that way, your bottom line is affected by this. That's why a lot of restaurants like Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out Burger stress customer service so well, because they know that if they lose a customer, they don't lose that customer just for that one visit. They lose that customer for the course of years, and that's a lot of money that they lose. Same aspect here. Whatever you can do to kind of grin and bear it and not lose that account, deal with that customer. And eventually you may have to drop certain customers. I'm not saying you should keep everybody, but there are situations where if you do lose your temper, you lose that customer, you lose that income, that's your fault at that point, not their fault. Later on, if you decide to transition them out of your service route, that's not a problem. But if you lose that customer immediately because you can't handle the situation, that's a problem. So develop that thick skin. Don't get offended easily, and really work on your ability to deal with people on their level and not on your level. I think that's the key distinction. We, of course, want people to respect us and respect our business, but that's not always the case. And you're the same way when you go somewhere as well and you don't like something. Of course, you're going to complain. You're going to point out a deficiency in the business. And the same thing that they're doing to you, we kind of repeat that process when we go out there. So it's something that is a learned trait in business, I think. You can learn it, you can overcome it, and you can really deal with these tough customers in a realistic fashion so that it doesn't affect your business. Looking for other podcasts I have recorded, you can, of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel where they get published Monday through Friday there. And if you are looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. And there's a podcast icon with the drop-down menu of other podcasts I've recorded there. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguidecoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.